Right. If you watched the last video or read the title, then you know this video shouldn't be a surprise for you on the topic. Well, it might be a surprise if you, for some reason, click based on my VTuber model, started a small conversation about early access games, and didn't want to explore more of it because it is too interesting to not make a full video about. That full video is this video. Surprise, surprise. I would have hoped you realized that by now, but I won't give expectations for you. I sound so fucking smug. So I believe I only bought about 3 early access games, and I remember it was Baldur's Gate 3, Hades 2, Path of Exile 2, New Arc Line, and I believe that was it. I know I said 3 and immediately named 4. There are probably more, to be honest, but there isn't an early access tab for games owned in Steam. Okay, there is. Because there's a ton more games, I'll showcase for you all and read them out. Alright, now, so no script for it. That was all, like, you actually have to go in and search it because there's no, like, it's not a genre. So it's a full tag you need to go in. I'm including this, by the way. So we have Aim Labs, Ark Survival Evolved, Ark Survival of the Fittest. Makes no sense. Both these games should be out by now. Black Squad, Bakura, Coffin of Andy and Lele. I literally tried to stream this game and it was not like, how do I explain? Like, it wasn't fully done, so that makes sense. Deadlock makes sense. Death Must Die. Okay, it might not be out. Divine Knockout, Eternal Card Game, Fire Reborn, Hades 2, Have a Nice Death. I finished Have a Nice Death. Last Epoch, Last Oasis, Path of Exile 2, Soulstone Survivors, VR Chat, We Happy Few, and then like some software. But I finished Have a Nice Death. It's definitely it ended. Like I don't get how. I guess they just never took out the early access tab. That would make more sense. The first 3 games I mentioned are games I actually played or played for a bit. I played Baldur's Gate 3 before they released and continued to play it once it came out. Hades 2, I only touched for about a few days and stopped playing because I wanted to experience it on full release. Path of Exile 2, I'm playing my monk build and I got it to level 27, beat a boss, and decided to start a new build. I went for a ranged pet build, and life is easier from the start, and I kind of hope they either make it easier for melees or make the game as difficult for ranged. I'll talk about the benefits I see from it, and talk about the negatives right after. So the benefits, like I said last video, is that you get to play the game earlier than expected. Now this is great if you don't have any other game to play at that point, so you can start to learn the game you have been hyped about. That doesn't mean you will have an easy time, because early access is just a semi playable version of the game that you, the player, have to limit test. I also mean limit test in all the ways because your goal is to try to find bugs and see how far you can push your character with the limited content you have. To give context, with early access games, you tend to pay for the game at a very discounted price because you are paying for a game that isn't ready for a full release. That's what a ton of people that buy these early access games understand. The game isn't done. The information is there that the game isn't ready for full release and things might be buggy. Bosses will not be optimized. Some playstyles may be harder than others and won't get fixed till the devs feel like dropping a patch. Now, I enjoy that so much information being presented so far in PoE 2 is knowing that Melee is really hard to play at this current point. That is a proper way to say that Melee sucks. Now, to give a more educated reason, it is very easy to get swarmed in PoE 2 and die unless you stack armor. Now, if you're ranged, you don't have to get close to get hit, so it's less likely you will be swarmed because of this. The sad part is that my monk does good damage against mobs, but if he get hits a few times, it's over. That is kind of the sad thing about going all in on the preferred stats and not putting anything into the physical stats. I say physical because you have 3 stats you're allowed to level in your skill tree. There's 3 stats you can choose are physical, dexterity, and intelligence. Physical gives you health and allows you to equip tanky items. Dexterity gives you more accuracy in your attacks and helps your ranged attacks. Intelligence gives you mana and works with your energy shield. Also, Every time you level up a stat, you get points to your gem management window. The more points you have, the more gems or support gems of that type you can equip. So, it is beneficial to level up a stat when you can. I kind of wish I knew how fragile I was before I started leveling my monk, because I would have focused more on a tanky monk. But I feel like I will make a different build later on to try that out. But truthfully, the name of the game when it comes to ARPGs is to experiment and try out different builds, see which one fits you more. You're rewarded for trying out different characters because you're given a stash that is shared between all your characters. That was something in the first one, but it's something to look forward to. I made a pet class character that truthfully isn't my plan for that character. My plan is for the character to have dots and for the dots to be the main focus while the pets tank. I have no idea if it'll work because that's the thing with these games. You never know. There's always worth it to try. Okay, this is becoming more of a PoE2 video rather than a video about early access games. To resume the actual conversation, early access games should always be looked at as a work in progress because they are a condensed version of what you can play. But what you can play is hours of content. If we go back to PoE2, I believe you can basically play the full game because people are getting to Act 3 and getting their full bullets down. Again, it isn't the full game because you don't have all of the abilities or classes that will be added in the full release. I just talked about a really good thing about early access games, which is that you get to try out things before things are out. That means you can find what build or class you like the most. Once the game fully releases, you'll know what you actually want to play. That kind of changes depending on the game you're playing, but truthfully, I feel like most games, like a PoE2, can succeed with early access because you have all these different classes to play around with. PoE2, you have all these different builds and classes that you have so much content to hold you over till release. Okay, to fully wrap this long plot point, the pros are that you can limit tests and have a ton of content to play before launch. So the cons for early access is that you never know when the game will get off of early access. There are games that have been on early access for years, and hopefully if it is the game you play, you hope it doesn't take long. You lose a lot for a game to be in early access, and the biggest thing is a complete game. So let's talk about what makes a complete game when it comes to early access. Because for an early access game to complete, it needs everything that is supposed to be in the game to be included. Now, truthfully, that is a hard thing to define, because if we just trust what the devs told us, what was going to be in the game, then a big majority of games would still be in early access. For the people that didn't get that, I'm suggesting that a lot of games promising they don't deliver on. So going back to PoE2, as been said that the dev team will put in more classes into the game, so until they fully release the game, that will be missing. When it came to Baldur's Gate 3, we can only go to a certain point, and then we basically have to start over. So it was a fully condensed version of the game. So, like I said earlier, this is great for limit testing, but it ultimately isn't because that may be a condensed version of your character. The reason I say that is because that is just the early access version, and in the full version, the character / class you enjoy might receive a rework. Now, why is this such a bad thing, you ask? It's bad if you have to relearn a class you spent hours limit testing, thinking that you knew what you were going to play upon release. Are you allowed to be mad? Truthfully, no. Because at the end of the day, you should go in thinking of an early access game as a beta, because things are subject to change. If you know this, then you can't really be mad unless the game makes the class you played worse than the alpha. If the game was better in the early access than in the full release, then there is a big problem. I said in the previous video that releasing a game in early access is good, but in truth that is subjective. I feel like a game should only get released in early access when the game is close to done, but you rather do early access to test bugs and also need more time to see if you can fund more money to add more things to the game. Now, that's a good thing, so why wasn't it added to my pros section? Reason for that is because that isn't always the case. Just because we get early access and the studio gets early funding from it doesn't mean that we'll get more things during launch. Truthfully, It just means that they have more time to work on the things they feel like isn't ready for release. The bad thing with this is that we don't know what is being worked on and what it will look like when it comes out. Again, if you're lucky, they'll release patch notes. Hopefully that tells us on what they are working on. Again, nothing is known with an early access game until the game fully releases, which is so scary. Really not that scary. If that's what's scaring you, you have a very good life, I guess. There aren't a ton of cons with early access because the main cons are just time and also uncertainty. Time con is not knowing how long you're waiting for the game to go to full release. The reason that is bad is because after a while, you want to see more content or different things added, make gameplay more well-rounded. The simplest reason is that you may just want to see where the story leads, and you aren't able to because it has been in early access for a while. If you're lucky, the game shows how long they plan to be in early access. With PoE 2, they have a blurb in the early access information panel that says that they plan to be in early access for about 6 months or until they feel the game is ready. Oh, if I passed it and I didn't know. Alright, we gotta go to the store page. Oh, this is not PoE 2. This is literally Pathfinder. This is really Pathfinder. Including it. I'm including it. Alright, so literally it says, again, the last part means it could go over the initial goal. So, oh wait, you cannot see it. Okay, I gotta move my fucking head. Alright, it's here. There you go. There you can see it now. As it's like going to a different screen, so I gotta move it soon. But it's literally right here. This is what I meant highlighted. But I had to move it. Actually, I can just done this. I'm a dumbass. Never mind. Also, I'm hiding my friends list. That was the actual smarter reason. Alright. I'm keeping all of this. Again, the last part means it could go over the initial goal. So if it's still in early access, past 6 months timeline, they can just retreat to that. The uncertainty is, again, not knowing if the game you played will be changed in a good or a bad way. Again, the best way to deal with that uncertainty is to just not play the game in early access and wait for the game to come out fully. I would still suggest getting the game in early access because you are getting a discounted version of the game. A channel I enjoy called Batismo Gaming talk more in depth to a game when it comes to early access games. To paraphrase them, only buy early access games if you plan to help the devs find bugs and limit test the game. I feel like buy it because it is cheaper, but also to find out what the game is about and if you will like it. I kind of only buy early access games I feel like I will like in the first place, but that is just a me thing. Cool, I'm gonna add a blurb here. So here's the thing, like I said, only if you're gonna get an early access game, please like the game. Do not buy a game you do not like or feel like it's not your cup of tea. Because I have so many people I know that will fucking buy a game or play a game they should theoretically like in early access and then complain about not having controller support. It's a fucking early access game. If they have controller support, I'm very surprised because it's early access. That controller support is not really something they need to really care about at this point. A lot of early access games, RPG. Okay, I didn't say that yet, but don't complain about shit not being included because it's an early access. Like, it's not gonna have everything you want to have. Alright, continuing. The funny thing is, once you are done with pros and cons of early access, everything else is just subjective. You kind of have to trust that the game will improve once it goes to full release. So, my humble opinion, I would rather early access over releasing a game that's riddled with bugs because it will improve once it goes to full release. Games of that note that released in that fashion were Cyberpunk 2077 and No Man's Sky. Is it No Man's Skies or No Man's Sky? I don't really know. I'm just going to call it No Man's Sky. I can actually search it. I have the internet. Also, I'm on Steam. No Man's Sky. Let's go. I got it right. I am including this. What the fuck is wrong with me? The reason these games failed were because they were pressured by financial backers to release a game, and also because public perception felt they were taking too long to release. Both games failed for different reasons, truthfully. No Man's Sky failed because they failed on their promises what the game was supposed to be. At this point, their promises have been fulfilled because they had time to work on everything. When it comes to Cyberpunk 2077, they failed because they released a game riddled with bugs because, like No Man's Sky, they released before they were ready. Truthfully, both companies decided not to just give up on their game and keep updating and upgrading the game until they were satisfied with the result. Cough, cough, Concord. At this point, both games are still being updated years after release and are loved by fans. Kind of a total 180 compared to release. I feel like they would have succeeded in today's game climate if they just released the game in early access. This is all what ifs because we have no idea what would happen because that pass for them wasn't a thing. They needed more time to work on the game and wasn't given it, so they had a failed launch. I feel like I'd rather the early access route than being in development hell and not knowing if the game will come out. I said earlier that RPGs are perfect for early access, but I feel like single player games wouldn't be great. The reason I feel like single players wouldn't do well is because a lot of single player games focus on one sort of playstyle. Again, an RPG is a single player game, but I am talking about narrative focused games. Again, you could do a single player game that has a small part of the game be playable. I think a game with a branching dialogue could succeed because there's a ton of content that could be shown and explored within a few hours. But I feel like that wouldn't go well because in those games, you're just one character and there wouldn't be any build to really discover. The content would just be story based, and unless there are a ton of branching story paths, you would just play a paid demo that is disguised as early access. Again, RPGs fall under single player games because you can play it by yourself, and some RPGs allow for multiplayer, but usually that just includes your party side. To explain that better, if the party size in the game is 4, then 3 friends of yours can join you for adventure. Again, if you don't have friends, just play the game by yourself and play with the NPCs. Anyway, that is it for this video because I don't really think I can say any more about early access games without repeating myself. And no, that's a lie. I'm not done yet. I'll make a final blanket statement. Say I like the aspect of early access because it is helpful for games that aren't fully ready for release. They are able to compress the game to a smaller version that's somewhat ready to play. It wouldn't make sense to send out a game that isn't ready when a lot of people can look at the past and see what Cyberpunk and No Man's Skies went through. I would love to say only release your game when you have everything ready, but there are a lot of factors to companies releasing early. It could be backwards pushing them because they want to see their money coming back, or backlash for taking too long, because I feel like Silksong is going through at this current point. I will say it again, Silksong only release when you feel like you are 100% done with the game. People will always find a way to complain, so only release games when you feel like you like what you are making. That is it for today's video. I kind of knew what I was going to talk about, but didn't think that I would spiral into a whole conversation about PoE 2. The only reason that happened was because it is the only game I'm playing at this current point that is in early access. I could try out Greedfall 2 because I did enjoy the first game, but after playing Baldur's Gate 3, I tend to avoid games I plan to stream. I'd rather be surprised when I play rather than guess what has changed when I actually get to fully immerse myself into the game. I don't plan to stream Path of Exile 2, so I'm happy to play the game in early access. Tell me what you think about early access games. If you think that is something that should stay in gaming. My name is Oni Incubus, and that has been my time. I will see you all in the next one. I hope you have a good one. Later days. I hope this works. Okay, love you all. Bye. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Love you. Peace. Consensual.